Hi everyone, Angus Campbell here. Monday the 6th of May, bank holiday today, so doing some jobs around the house, but get some more done on the A70 Lightning in the garage. So where we left it a couple of days ago was at last electrical trail finished with side panels and air boxes, and now at last we can move on to the wheels, which are all ready to go, but we've got to for the back wheel got to and the front wheel got to insert bearing spacers in the front wheel, the spindle, and also we've got to prepare the brake plates as well. So if we go up on the bench, we've got the brake plates at the back there ready to go, but we've got to sort the installation of all the brake mechanism for inside the hub. And here we've got the box of parts that we took off the bike when I stripped it. So we've got to clean and sort those. And also next to that we've got my box of spares, which includes bearings, spindles, spacers, etc. I think we can reuse actually most of the original stuff. I think the bearings are going to be fine. I doubt if they've had really that much use in the life of this bike. The sprocket looks to be okay from the teeth wise, but we'll clean that up and see if it's still got some good plating underneath. I think the shoes look as though they've had pretty little wear, and as I said before, I think in general this bike has had a pretty short but relatively hard life when it's been on the road, and we think it was last on the road in 1980. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to sort out these original parts, clean them all up, lay them all out, and I'll bring you back so we can lay out what we need for each of the hubs. See you shortly. Okay everyone, we're all set up at the bench, and I've now sorted and cleaned all the parts that are required for the front wheel. So we've got the brake plate, the brake plate parts, and also then the wheel spindle with all the bearings, the grease retainers, circlips, and the retaining ring, the threaded retaining ring. I'm really pleased with the way that these parts have cleaned up. The brake cams have come up almost like new. There was a lot of grime on them, but the original plating is in very good condition. It hasn't rusted, and I suppose that's thanks to the fact that when this bike was on the road all these years ago, it was in the US, in Virginia I think, so hopefully the weather's been kind to it. The brake shoes are original Lockheed. I've cleaned these up with a bit of fluid, but making sure I don't actually wet the shoes. There was a bit of brake dust on these, but there's loads of wear left on these, and these are the original riveted ones, and they're in very good condition, both of them. There's a pair of these and these are exactly the same, obviously, because it's a twin leading shoe arrangement. So what we'll do is grease some parts up, and then first of all we'll put the brake shoes and adjustments, etc., and the cams back into the brake plate, and then we'll start to think about the arrangement for the spindle. What I have noticed is that when you remove these, you have to take one ball bearing off the spindle and drift that out separately. One ball bearing is very good. They're both greased up very well. It's original grease and it's pretty clean. But I have noticed that the ball bearing on the brake drum side of the wheel, although it moves fairly well, you can just feel it's not quite as smooth. And actually, when you put it into a vise and check the side-to-side play, it's got play on it. So that actually is scrap.
But other than that, all the parts are in very good order. I've got spare bearings, that's no problem at all, so we'll drift one on there before we install that. But first of all, let's get the brake plate together. And so what I'll do is I'll get the parts greased up, and then I'll bring you back, and you can watch how I assemble this. What I've got here, which you can't see very well, is the parts book, just so I can make sure that I don't miss any bits and pieces out, because there are one or two things that I'll point out on the way that some people do miss. But yeah, let's get this together with all the original parts, because they're all in very, very good condition. Okay, so here we go. So I've got the brake cam spindles lightly greased, and I've also got what they call tappets as well, brake tappets, that the the cam spindles push against when you push the brake, and these push out the brake shoes via the vernier adjusters, which are installed on the other end of the brake tappet. So let's go ahead and start assembling. First things first, on the outside of the brake plate, we need to insert the cams. The scoop goes at the top, cams face down. A bit more a bit more grease. You have to grease up these spindles and the tappets pretty well, but obviously you don't want grease anywhere else in the brake. There we go, that slides in a treat in that side. And these spindles do have O-rings on them, and that's actually to prevent water and other dirt, etc. ingressing into the brake, rather than grease coming out. There we go. So always check with these which way around they go, because they're a flush fit, and they may have been, I don't know whether they did it in the factory, whether or not they honed those to suit the cam spindle, but certainly in this case, yeah, they certainly fit better a certain way round. So those are in. Just wipe up any excess grease. And then last thing to do on this side of it, on the outer side of it, is to fit, well, just to put in place the nut and washer on the small spindle that is effectively your what do you call it? Your brake plate locking arm. In this case, it's not an arm; it's just a spindle that actually slots into a stub on the fork. So that can go in place, ready to go, because we need to locate that and then just tighten that up. And again, that's the original nut and washer in pretty good nick. In fact, let me just clean that up a little bit more. I'm just going to put the wire wheel, the electric wire wheel, on just to clean those up a little bit. So safety glasses on. Bear with the noise for a sec. I've never done this with you on, but I'll keep you going. Okay, that's that done. Just a little light dressing on it, because I don't want to ruin the original galv white nickel plate. And that's a plain washer with a lock nut, a half-height lock nut, and that's original. Okay, that's that side done. So we turn over now, and if we just make sure the cam arms are facing down, they'll be in the right position, so we can then start fitting tablets and other items on this side. First thing that I normally fit is what do they call this in the manual? Sorry, in the parts book. That's a abutment for the microcam adjuster. So this goes on the opposite side to the what they call the tappet. So in fact, if you like, we can just push these tablets in first. Like so. And if you operate the brake arm, there we go. Pushes the tappet out, which is what we want. Similar to the other side. Come on, think the other side. And there we go. Nice and loose and greased up. Then on the other side, then we've got the what they call the micro adjuster, which is the vernier adjuster. What they call the abutment plate. So this is steel, and so this is so the verniers etc. don't damage the aluminium. Oh, it's not an aluminium plate, is it? No, it's not an aluminium plate. There's obviously some additional protection, and this is just a press fit. So what we might have to do is just push that with some pipe grips and use the tappet on the other end just as a security. Push that in like so on both sides. She goes. So one. Similarly on the other end. They're just a push fit, obviously, because the shoes are tight against these. That's that one in. So now what we can do is we can put the vernier adjusters, what they call the microcam adjusters, in, and the way that you do this is that the microcam fits into this slot like so. There we go. So just to show you this, if you can see it, this is your microcam adjuster. So you can see it's got an eccentric adjustment on it as you turn it. So this sits in what they call here they call that 21, the cage for the microcam adjuster. So that sits in there. It slots into the brake tappet. And then the brake shoe with its leading edge and with a slot for the adjuster, slots in that side like so. that's it, that's one side together. Do the same for the other side. Making sure the adjuster is on its lowest value. Actually, I didn't check that on this side. Of course, it's all quite sloppy at the moment because it's these are fully floating shoes, so everything that keeps it together are the springs. There you go, and then the final job are the springs. So what I'm doing here, sorry, is just testing that the one spring will fit on one side and one will on the other, and it will in fact. And what I'm doing is just setting these up so that I can lever, if you like, one shoe in place with the spring attached to the brake shoes, which is sort of a standard way of fitting these. But I've just got to make sure that while I'm doing that, I'm holding the micro adjuster in place until we get that shoe located on it. So let's do that. Springs on at the other end, so we're just going to be a bit patient with this. Right, there's the spring on at this end. Pull them apart. Bang. We're in. Doesn't look quite right to me. I think we need a bit too bad. I think the springs need to be on the other hole. One. Yeah, this one's going to be a bit more awkward, I'm sure. It's on the other side. That's not right. Yeah, that's not right. So glasses on again. Right, what we want to do here, this spring is on fine. This one we need to move the hook on that side to the other hole so that it doesn't actually bend around the casting for the cam spindle. Just working out the best way to do that. Best way is to pull that off like that. Hold the other side in place. Keith Robinson, but it will work. There we go. Right. Now, bend that up to there. There we go. Got it. And then pull that across. Gotcha. That's better. Now, of course, these will automatically centre when we get the plate onto the hub, and also what we can do then is adjust with the verniers. I'll just show you that now before we install the brake. And you do this through the inspection hole in the hub. There we go. So that's working. That's working too. And you can hear it clicking against its ratchet. And I'll show you how to adjust these properly when we're on the bike. These brakes sometimes come in for quite a lot of criticism, and the reason being the reason being that these usually work poorly is because people don't realise that you have to adjust them to ensure you're getting as much of the surface of the brake on the brake shoes on the drum. And it was a problem in the early days too, and the factory actually released a bulletin, a service bulletin, ensuring that everybody's aware that these brakes need to be adjusted properly on both verniers. And the way you do it is that you screw them clockwise on the ratchet until they'll turn no more, and then you back off one click. Easy as that. Two-second job, but it can make all the difference. Okay, that's that part done. So now what I need to do on the spindle is I'm just going to change that bearing. Just it's only a push fit. There you go. It's coming off with my fingers almost. There is a spacer on here as well, but that's quite tight fit. Mustn't forget to ensure that's on when we fit the new bearing, and then we'll get the wheel up and we'll offer this up to the wheel. So I'll be back in a sec once I've replaced that bearing. Okay, so I've got a new bearing pushed onto the spindle. This is on the brake plate side. Packed that bearing with grease. We've got the original bearing from the left-hand side of the front wheel, which is in good condition. Just get a bit more grease in that actually. Okay, so the order is, what we've got to do in the wheel first on the left hand side is we put the retaining circlip in on the left hand side. On the inside of that we've got then a grease retainer. Then we put the bearing in on that side, and then we put another grease retainer the other side of that bearing. Then we can push the spindle in. No, tell a lie. Then we put the circlip in for the grease retainer on the other side of the wheel. Then we put the grease retainer in, and then we can slip the whole of the spindle through all that. This bearing then goes up against that grease retainer, and then we fit we screw in the bearing retainer on this side, and that keeps the whole lot screwed, the whole spindle then into the wheel. And then we put the brake plate on, and this is the brake plate locking nut. And there's nothing special about this nut other than the fact it's got a slight shoulder on it, and it's not actually a locking nut, it's a plain nut, but that's how it should be, with no washer, because there's a slight shoulder on it. And of course, once the wheel is mounted in the forks, actually there's no way that nut can loosen off a little, but there's no way it can come all the way undone, because it's nowhere to go past the forks once the spindle's in the forks. So we'll get the wheel over and set you up near the floor, and we'll put this front wheel together. Okay, we're set up over near the front of the bike now with the wheel, and just in front of me, which you can't see at the moment, are all the parts on the floor with the brake plate ready to go to, but you should be able to see the front wheel now. On the floor then we've got the sequence of components for the spindle. So from left hand side to right hand side we've got a circlip, a grease retainer, left hand bearing, inner grease retainer, then we've got go up the spindle, and then we go to a circlip for the and then the right hand inner grease retainer, then we have the right hand bearing, and then we have the threaded spindle retainer. And what we'll start with first is we'll drift in the first of all we'll drift in the left hand bearing with its inner grease retainer on the other side, and then we'll put the outer grease retainer on this side of it and the circlip, and then when we put the spindle in from the other side and drift that in gently, there's a lip on the spindle which will automatically then push the bearing back tight up against the retainer and the circlip on the left hand side. So let's get cracking. So first of all we've got the inner grease retainer. This is on the left hand side. Then we'll have a bearing, and the bearing in this case I'm going to drift in. Right, here she goes. Okay, she's in, and she's in far enough to hopefully allow the grease retainer to go in, the outer grease retainer, and then to put a circlip on. But we're not quite there yet. We just need to go in a little bit further so we can get the circlip in its groove. Touch more. Still not quite there. circlip with some circlip pliers. And then with a rubber mallet, or the end of it, just tap it in, make sure it's into the groove. Like so. Okay, that's the left hand side in, so now we can go turn the wheel over. So that's the left hand bearing in with its two grease retainers and the circlip to hold it in on the other side. The circlip on the right hand side, the inner grease retaining locating circlip is already in, so we can butt up against that. Now when we push in the spindle with the inner grease retainer, I should say, on the inside, you can just drift that in with a spindle, and I usually use a box spanner. It's roughly the right size. It should go in with a rubber mallet really. We've just got to make sure that we don't damage the threads for the spindle retainer. So I'm just going to straddle this, so excuse me a moment while I straddle this so we can... Oh, there we go. You can see that. There we go, in. Turns. And what we can do now is we can screw in the spindle retainer, and this also acts as the grease retainer on this side. Now then, I've got to think about this. So if the wheel is rotating clockwise to go forward, then I think this should be a right hand thread. Ouch. And that's just cut me. It has two. Okay everyone, after a bit of a fight, we got the bearing locking ring in the end, screwed in the end. There was I'd obviously caught the thread with one of the taps when I was seating the bearing, and flattened the thread on it, but I cleaned the thread up and managed to get the locking ring on okay. Placed the brake plates in, and I've just tightened up the central locking nut for that. So now the wheel is ready to go into the bike over here. So what we'll do is just unscrew the end caps. As you can see, I'd already got the nuts and washers sorted out for this. Put the end caps on to test fit those, and they're fine. These are the original end caps, but with and original studs, but with new nuts and spring washers. Move that away. Basically roll this wheel into place. Make sure the brake plate is in the right position. Sorry everyone, you can't really see this. There you go. So what I'm doing at the moment is at the back here is the brake plate locking stud and nut, just making sure that locates. So I'll just need to undo that a sec. Just about there. Not quite there yet. There we go. We're in. Okay, front wheel in. So now I'll get the end caps back on. Make sure these are the correct way around. There we go. One spring washer, one nut, there we go. We're there. Opposite corner. Straight on. Three. And finally number 4 on this side. And the same on the other side.
Okay, that's all four on the other side. So, there we are, front wheel in. Just needs tightening up, which I'll do shortly. So, let's just have a quick view of the bike. And there it is, front wheel in. So still got the rear brake plate to do, but that's a bit easier than the front. But just go and tighten that up, and all's good. So next episode will be rear brake plate, rear wheel in. See if we can sort out spindles, etc. A lot more paraphernalia at the back before we fit the wheel, but we'll crack on with that in the next video. That's all for now, everybody. Thanks very much for watching, and see you in the next time. Cheers, bye-bye.